impacted the follow through.
I think this is all the same.
You have an agenda? Agenda.
I said I thought they left in January, but I don't know, who knows? Who's No.
I was on 7, that bypass, the Route 7 bypass, from 5:46 until almost a little an hour. I never got out of first gear. Nothing. I got up to the thing. I'm waiting for like, what the hell is happening? I never got out of first gear. You can tell how bad. Look, never got out of first gear the whole time. Inch by inch. An hour. To go what? How long is that? 5 miles?
Which means
Yeah, it's crazy.
You ready? Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we, before you sit, can we do one housekeeping thing? 'Cause we're going to have a lot of student athletes come around. Can we just do this? Not too much. This way, this way.
Push in.
Yes.
Push in.
All right, perfect. Okay.
Connect.
Thank you.
Whoops. It's rolling. Is it rolling around? It's rolling. No.
All right, sorry about that.
I don't have any announcements, so let's move with adopting an agenda. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Hoffman, second. Mrs. Rajat, all in favor? Okay, let's turn over to Board of Education comments, starting off with Mrs. Miller.
Thanks, Bob. I was at the vaping forum last night, and I just want to acknowledge that the high school staff put together a fantastic evening, very informative, and something that I hope continues for our community. The only not so great thing was the attendance, and I hope that there's something that we can do about that in the future, because this is something that is not going away. So I hope it's something that we continue to work on.
She will go after the board, and she's going to introduce our new liaison next year.
Absolutely. This time of the year, we reflect, we celebrate, we recognize our athletes. I also want to recognize a few others. I know Rose Bear is here in the audience, and our high school robotics team for organizing and hosting their second annual first Lego League qualifying tournament and their first junior FLL tournament, expo actually. We had 8 teams of the 20 that are in the district that showcased at this event, from Aranda, and Tasago. It was really well run. It was nice seeing so many faces, seeing Deanna, seeing Dr. Robinson, seeing others there. The families, the teachers that were there supporting this program also appreciate having your support. So thank you for that. And last night, there was a highlight with last night's Shen National Science Honor Society. It's the induction ceremony. And of course, congratulations to all those that were inducted. But there was a student representative there that graduated from Shen back in 2006. Her name is Courtney Moore. And it was exciting to hear what she had to say, hearing her credentials, hearing what she's done in the time that the 12 years that she's been out of Shen, but the fact that she's coming back, she's inspiring many. She's currently working at Knowles Atomic Labs. I guess Floral is now the contractor that is running that laboratory. She shared what she was doing with her free time, which it's hard to imagine what influence she's doing. A lot of great things. It was really inspiring. And what I wanted to bring that up because I know we have all these athletes here. I know that many of them are graduating, they're looking to the future, but what I wanted to say to connect those two things is please come back. Please share what you've done. We'd love to hear it. We know it will inspire the future generation here at Shen. Thank you.
Good evening. Actually, we keep referring to our wonderful student athletes that are here, our scholar athletes, and one of the things, touching upon great successes academically, but also our leaders that we have right here in front of us, our student athletes. And going back to something Mrs. Miller said about, parents going, lack of attendance at vaping presentations and all that, just giving our students empowerment as leaders, your ambassadors, people look up to you as athletes, and just to make sure peer-to-peer, that you have a stronger voice than any of us adults when talking to your peers. We actually had a high school partnership team meeting. Mrs. Miller and I were there yesterday, and we were saying, you're the ones that are going to listen to each other. So just, if you see something, hear something, just share that. And we always say that to you, but be a great example to your peers who are looking up to you. And if you see someone that's vaping, just talk to them. And I think it takes great leaders like yourselves. And I know some of you might think I'm totally crazy, but that's okay. I do have teenage children. So, but seriously, we're looking to you to help us with that. And also coming up with ways that you think we can present it better to parents, to yourselves as teams, what else we can do. And we're going to turn to you for that because, again, you're the ones that really can lead us in the right direction on how to address it becoming even more and more of an epidemic. So, again, we'll turn into you. So, and we'll also recognize you guys tonight, too. But help us out with that, okay? And just want to wish everyone a happy and healthy holiday. So that's it for me.
I'm going to forego comments in the interest of time.
I noticed in the paper today that the Board of Regents was calling for a $2.1 billion increase in aid for the forthcoming year, and that was somewhat higher than last year. I think the most significant thing that they did was that they called for $500 million of that to go to foundation aid. If you remember last year, while there was a significant amount of money allocated for education generally, it was dedicated to specific things, and it didn't really help the schools in their day-to-day operations and so forth the way an increase in foundation aid would. So this basically marks the beginning of the process that is supposed to wrap up by April the 1st, and we have to gear up too to let our voices be heard, to make sure that they are aware of what our needs and what it's really like in the trenches, if you will. So that's all I have to share.
Thanks, Gary. Well, that's the thing when you start on one side of the table, because everybody talks about your comments like we do. Christina and I talk about that all the time. So last night we split our time. Some of us went over to the vaping venue, and some of us went over to the Honor Society, which was really inspiring. And I know, in talking with Dr. Wood, it was really inspiring to see the amount of females that are now being inducted, that are becoming, more inspired by engineering and STEM. I had that discussion with Rose Bear over the weekend too. Our robotics is growing as such, so I'm happy to see that. And the first Lego League, when you talked about that, I watched my son go through that as a fourth grader, and how fun. When they get to solve their problem, they get to move on, they get to maybe even do more next year. So it's it's really a wonderful venue that we're able to offer our student body. So that's really exciting. So that's it in the interest of time. Bob?
Thank you. I'll add a few more comments on the session I attended last night, which was the vaping session. I got to see this a year before. We had twice as many parents, more than twice as many parents as a year ago, and it was done while we had another event, fairly significant event in the high school. My sense is that our administrators have gotten a lot deeper and smarter on the issue. Definitely you saw with the assistant principals, their ability to speak to the topic, to talk about the subtleties of the topic much stronger, and they've been to some sessions where they've been trained on it. So thanks to the administrative staff for carrying the ball on that. There will be another session in February that they're gearing up for. My sense on this is it's an extremely intense topic, and when you have someone like Mr. Agostinoni present some of the concerns he's seen, we have had students go to the school nurse and say, I think I've taken something and I don't know what it is and I don't feel right. That has happened a couple of times this year. Over 100 students have been reported as vaping, and we estimate that the percentage-wise, there's probably a lot more. And the other thing I feel is that not all parents are fully aware. There's a mood within our community that some parents get it, they understand it, others don't. And as Mr. Agostinoni pointed out, is that in situations like this, what finally gets people to be aware is when you have a catastrophic loss of life. And we don't want to do that. We want parents to be aware at all levels, as Mr. Delala pointed out when you talked about this earlier in the year. I think we still need to figure out how to do that. I don't want to steal the thunder or step on the toes of the administrators. We did see Mr. Nat at the session, and I've talked to him since I'm on the partnership team for CODA. You know, they have plans in the middle schools to bring this forward. I think our administrators are running with the ball. I think our role is to make sure that all parents at all levels fully understand the reach and implications here. So that's something we will work on in January, and I look forward to carrying that out. That's it for me. At this point, more public session, but we'd like to start off with McGarvey, who is our student liaison, has been with us for the past year.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bhargavi. I'm currently a junior at Shenendehowa High School East. Tonight is my last meeting with the Board of Ed. I'm truly honored for having the opportunity to serve with such a prestigious and honorable group of people. And right now I'd like to introduce my successor, Cameron.
Nice.
Hello, my name is Cameron Langoni. I'm currently a sophomore. I've worked with the Senate for 2 years now. I'm really excited to get to work for the board and look forward to this opportunity.
Cameron. Cameron, you're also going to be serving on a foundation with us as well, are you? That's phenomenal. Thank you very much for your time.
I just want to take this opportunity and thank the board one last time for having me. It's truly an honor, and I'm so happy to see what you guys have done in order to make our school a better place. I know a lot of students don't see it because a lot of them don't tend to come to the meetings, but it was really inspiring to see how hard you guys work, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And hold on a second. Hold on. No, we'd like to thank you. One thing we noticed about you is you ask some great questions, and you provide a lot of perspective and insight that often we don't have within our generation and where we are in life. And I think you have continued a great legacy. We saw it with the two students before you. I'm sure Cameron will as well. But you bring a unique insight that we need to understand how things impact students, whether it be high school, middle school, elementary school. So you've definitely carried it through, and we thank you very much for doing that. Thank you. Thank you. At this point, we'll open up to public comments. We'll have our two students representatives to come up first, but while they do that, I will read. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education. Are there any residents in attendance? If so, please complete the comment form. The board will not address specific comments, but ask for your name and address in the event follow-up is necessary. We remind residents that the public comment portion of our meeting is only one item in our agenda. We therefore ask each speaker to be succinct as possible, and the remarks be limited to 2 or 3 minutes. We would also expect the residents to speak in a respectful and courteous manner, so as to monitor proper civility and decorum for our students. We will not allow disparaging, inflammatory, or accusatory comments about any school personnel or students. Residents may also contact the board by email at boe@shenet.org. All questions come in the Office of Public Information Office and are shared with the board and/or superintendent as appropriate. Policy questions, concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions and concerns are typically addressed by superintendent and/or designee. So thanks for listening, and please go ahead with your report to us.
All right. I'm Miranda. I'm a senior.
So am I, a senior, I'm Jane.
So reflecting on this past fall, this Sunday we've had a record number of events that we've held so far. We had 5, and that's the highest number that we've had in the most recent years. We started off the school year with the pep rally. Then we had the glow dance, which is the first time we ever held that event. We had our Suburban Council Leadership Conference where we hosted, 12 other schools, their student governments, and we got an opportunity to work with them for the day, and board members as well. And then we had candy cane sales that are fundraising.
Candy cane donations.
Oh, right, donations that are benefiting the Shen Helping Shen Fund. So Shen families that don't have as many resources at home, they can come to Shen Helping Shen, which is a fund through Senate, and we'll fund them money for things like field trips, AP tests, things like that. And what was it?
2 weeks ago, we had a coffee talk, and that's going to be our focus for the next part of the school year, which in 2019. We'll be focusing more on helping students find a platform to initiate change in our high schools. We're going to look to hold more coffee talks and speak outs in conjunction with the administration, working with the board members, and with people like the people sitting in front of me, student athletes who, like some board members have said, are at the forefront of student-initiated change in high schools. And we hope to see you there at our coffee talks, which always have, you know, bagels, muffins, coffee, coffee talk, provided by West End Bagel, shout out. And thanks for free food. And we just hope to see you there. SFA Senate always loves to see its student athletes thriving. So on that note, we would like to, Miranda and I would like to congratulate all of the fall athletes in front of us today. Thank you.
Nice job, ladies.
Are there any other residents who would like to speak? I don't see anyone.
Open? That sounds good.
Okay, so let's move on to Superintendent's report.
I'll bypass my comments for now because I'll be on the agenda later on, and just proceed to the tenure recommendations.
Okay.
Just switch.
Good evening. Typically, we have tenure recommendations in March for an effective date of September. At this time, we have 2 teachers that I'd like to have come up here while I speak about them briefly, that we are recommended for tenure at this time because they were what we would call off-cycle. They were hired at mid-time. So Andrea Zanluder and Mindy Mellon, if you would come up, I'll just read a little bit about both of them. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. So Mrs. Zanluder is a reading teacher in the district, and her supervisors are Mrs. Sherwin and Mr. Augustinoni. And in addition to the process, which includes observations and a series of meetings over the course of 3 or 4 years, Mrs. Sherwin wrote in her recommendation, Andrea is highly professional and fully committed to her students. She's committed to their learning, their skill development and achievement, and in that spirit, she continues to learn and grow as an educator. So it's my privilege to recommend to the Board of Education through Dr. Robinson, Andrea Zanluder for tenure. Our other recommendation for tenure is Mrs. Mindy Mellon, and her tenure was written by Rose Barra, Mr. Augustinoni, high school principal, and again, in the series of it's a long process for tenure. Here's what they wrote about her. Mindy is respected by her students and truly passionate about connecting the learning to real-world experiences that the students will face outside the classroom. She has made positive contributions to the culture of the business department and to the school as a whole. It's my privilege to recommend Mindy Mellon for tenure.
So can I have a motion? Mrs. Hoffman, Mrs. Miller, and all in favor? Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I got to switch. I can just shake it.
There you go. Did you? Yeah, really. Okay.
Speed through the rest of this.
Exactly.
Let's move on to information items, fall sports recognition. Go ahead, Mr. Cullen.
Good evening, Dr. Robinson, members of the Board of Education. First of all, I always like to come up here and thank the board and our student athletes. Make sure you understand that we kind of can't be where we are here today without the support of our Board of Education and support of our superintendent. So always, we really appreciate the support that you give us to be able to continue the things that we're trying to do in athletics. We had a great fall sports season. I was making some notes up here today, and I wanted to remind everybody that we started on August 13th in the blazing heat when it was 95 degrees out. We almost had a heat warning, and we ended with a snow day. So just to put that into perspective of life in the Northeast. And we were able to get the girls volleyball team in for practice, so thank you, Dr. Robinson. But we did end with we started in the heat, ended with a snow day. Once again this year we had over 900 student athletes participate in our fall sports program. That's been a consistent number. When I started as the athletic director over a decade ago, that number was down around 600, was actually about 590. So we've seen an increase of around 300 students, and that's through adding some teams, that's stretching our rosters to our max capacity. But 900 is a number we would put up against anybody in the state for a fall sports season. A couple of things that I would like to highlight: our junior plainsman night and our homecoming football game, both drew crowds of around 5,000, both drew crowds of about 5,000 fans. We saw an incredible school spirit this year from all our students at all our games, not just the football games. I was very pleased when we went to events, the number of students that came out to show their support, and really very positive for our student athletes. At those games, we highlight the dance team, the color guard team, the cheerleading team, and I heard somebody mention before robotics. Dr. Robinson and I a lot of times are at basketball games, and we're one of the last people to leave the gym. And even as the game's over, there's still always one group in the school that even works beyond what we do, and that's always the robotics group in the back down that one hallway. So it's great to be able to kind of make that connection of having them be able to come and participate in the homecoming events and at the football games. At the homecoming football game, we were able to dedicate the new press box in memory of Christopher Stewart. A lot of people in here remember Chris. I can't thank the members of the Board of Education and Dr. Robinson for their support and help and see that project come to fruition. I know a lot of people were here at the time we experienced that tragedy, and without the support of people here at that table, we would not have been able to complete that project. At our fall NLI ceremony, we had over 20 student athletes who've committed to Division I, Division II schools. That number will climb. We're also going to add this year, I spoke to Stan Hootie earlier in the week, we're going to do a D3 recognition ceremony for student athletes who will go and compete at the Division III level. We're going to recognize them at some time in the spring. Last year, just a couple other quick notes. Last year, we reorganized our Student Athletic Advisory Committee. I did hear the board members talking before about the issues with vaping and some of the presentations, and Mr. Agustinoni and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Our Student Athletic Advisory Committee, we usually meet 1 to 2 times a month to discuss issues that are important in the department. It's an opportunity for me to give a voice to our student athletes. It's been very successful. I'm actually meeting with them next Monday to talk about our 6-man game, and we're going to talk about some of these issues that have been coming up. We held a student athlete leadership conference on September 20th. Over 100 junior and senior student athletes from all 29 teams got together to talk about issues related to the department. It's great for me to hear about how they want to be coached, what type of experience they want to have, what things they'd like to see done better within the department, and then I can take that information back and bring that to the coaches. We are talking about, with our Student Athletic Advisory Committee, having members of that committee get together with our coaches to continue that dialogue and those discussions so our coaches can hear it firsthand from our student leaders. The Suburban Council also held their Student Athlete Leadership Summit, and we sent 20 junior student athletes to that as well, too, so that was also very successful. So that kind of highlights a lot of the things that are going on in the department, but now the reason that we're here is for our 4 championship teams. We did have 2 teams that made it to the championship as well. Girls soccer suffered probably one of the worst and toughest losses. Deanna and I had a conversation about that. One of the worst and toughest losses. Kind of scored a goal, had a goal scored on them. They then turned around, made a corner kick. The goal was not allowed, and it was just a heartbreaking loss for them. But they had a tremendous season. And then field hockey the day before, we had gone up to, where did we go? We went to Gloversville, played an outstanding game, great game back and forth. Goes to overtime. We get a chance. Don't know how that ball didn't go. Don't know how that ball didn't go in on the end line. And then Saratoga's best player comes down and scores a goal the other day. But still a fantastic season for those 2 teams. So first up for our championship teams, we have a team that basically is a regular here at this board meeting every year. This is their 8th straight championship as at Section 2 Class AA. Incredible season they had. They went all the way back to the state championship this year. I believe they finished 3rd at the state championship. Had an incredible regional volleyball match versus Baldwinsville. They've played them 5 times. The last 5 years, we've played them to have to advance to the state championship. We've beaten them the last 5 years. Just an incredible regional championship match. I could not have been more proud of the way the coaches and the girls just came together at that match. Either one of those teams was state worthy to be able to represent the regional team winner at the state championships. So I would like to bring up Lori Kessler and all our girls volleyball players and coaches. Come on up, Lori. And it's not easy to be 8-time defending Section 2 champs. Come on through, Maddie. Okay. What is it? 9. I forgot one. 9. Keep going, slide a little bit through. We're going to stop right there. All right, Lori, come on up. Everybody, this is Coach Kessler. She's used to being here.
Speaking on behalf of Coach Hedden, I couldn't be more proud to stand amongst this particular group of scholar athletes. And I guess I would say the thing that stands out about this particular group, more so than any other team, is that they were really truly fixated on developing a positive culture, which, they focused on being a good teammate, a coachable athlete, and really player accountability. And with that being said, everything else just really truly fell into place for this group. So we were able to find success. And I just want to also say to the Board of Education members and our big fan, Dr. Robinson, who cheered for us really loudly at States, and Mr. Conan, that we truly appreciate all the avenues that you provide for us as a program to find the success and work hard, and it does end up paying off. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I know what I'm doing.
They wanted me to let everybody know it's, just so for the record, it's 9-time defending Section 2 champions. I apologize, girls. Next up, we had another team which has had a lot of success in recent years. They were here quite frequently under Coach Dunham. He stepped aside from the girls program so he could focus on the boys. In our aquatic center, we were very fortunate to have a coach who comes in with a tremendous amount of experience, throughout her career. This is her 3rd year, and I always tell new coaches, it's usually in the 3rd year that we really start to see programs begin to pop a little bit, because the coach has come in, established their own culture, kind of made it theirs. And this year we really saw that happen with our girls swimming and diving team. And this team really had some great leaders too. I got to know a lot of them through the Student Athletic Advisory Council, a tremendous group of leaders on this team. They went on, they had a great sectional championship, beat Niskayuna. And if you ever want to see one of the loudest events you ever want to see in your life, come to sectional swimming championships and watch the 4x4 relay teams come out of the locker room. 4x1.
4x1. Yes.
4x1.
Yeah.
4x4 would be way too long.
That's right.
So, anyways, it's a tremendous event that we're fortunate to host here at our aquatic center. And this year they had a great championship over Niskayuna. Sandy Stanislavski and the girls swimming and diving team. Come on up. Congratulations.
Yeah, keep it tight.
As Lori mentioned, we too like to thank the support that we get from the school board. I know that I've seen Dr. Robinson at some of our meets. I know that it's also wonderful to have our athletic director right there for us at all times. He was at sectionals, he was at our invitational. It makes a big difference when the swimmers and divers know that there's that kind of support at the school, and I so appreciate it. It is a tough sport as far as the back and forths in the water. And I know that one of the things that I mentioned at our banquet was that they collectively swam 8,283 miles. They almost collectively made it to Sydney, Australia. That's pretty amazing. So when you think of from the first day until the last, that kind of hard work and the dedication that it takes to come in every day and work that hard. I think Thomas Jefferson I noticed all the quotes up here. I think Thomas Jefferson is the one that said, the harder I work, the luckier I am. And it's so true. These girls work so hard, and I'm so proud of them. I'm also proud of the coaches. This has been a total team effort. The coaches that aren't here, Alyssa DeFabio is over working with the little minis and working with the future swimmers. Ryan Gordon, a big part of this, working with the kids every day, with the girls every day. And he's over there working with he was at the boys swim meet, and now he's working with the more future swimmers for us. And Coach Hogan had a meet tonight, so he is not here, our dive coach and strength coach. And we have also Amy Stu, who did yoga and relaxation, because we really have to learn when to work hard and when to relax. True. I thank everyone, and I'd like to present this to you, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Our next team, again, is another team that has now become kind of a staple here as well. This is their fourth straight sectional championship. They beat Bethlehem to win the sectional championship again this year. They've really become a model program in our school. Great leadership, great coaching, great student athletes. Really like the way this program is kind of going in terms of where their trajectory is heading. I do believe you'll see them be a state level program over the course of the next half dozen years or so, if you look at the talent that they have in the program, with the way that it's being organized and structured. So without further ado, I'd like to call up our 4-time defending sectional champion boys volleyball team and Coach Coletta. Come on up. The taller team now.
There's the coach.
You say something, Tom?
I attempted to put a player on the spot to talk on our behalf. That's okay. This is our fourth sectional championship, and very proud of the boys, the way that they embraced our coaching philosophy this year, and the way that they work together. All programs have bumps along the way that they go through and that they experience. They all embrace the struggle, and really these guys thrived in that environment. And especially in our sport and in our school, no one really likes to see us win, and that seems to be a recurring theme. So that's part of the struggle that we go through. But without the support of the Board of Education, our athletic director, Dr. Robinson, this It really is what makes it possible for our boys and the parents at getting them to and from and to our tournaments. We're going across the state constantly. We want to thank you for that, for all the overwhelming support that you give our program to be able to do what we can do. So thank you.
I just want to highlight one thing with this team. This team last year came within 1 point of winning the state championship. They lost every starter from that team, and to show you what kind of culture they have, they got right back into the regionals again this year with a tremendous effort. So it shows the kind of development that goes on in the program. So congratulations to all our seniors and all our key players in the Bub Boys volleyball team. So congratulations. And our final team here tonight, incredible sectional championship race. They were able to beat Saratoga in an extremely close championship. That if you were at the Section 2 championship, you really didn't know who won. Was it Saratoga by 3? Was it Shen by 3? And when you're like me and you're trying to count the runners, Saratoga and Columbia have the same uniform on, and you're seeing how it all worked. You're saying, God, we just got beat by 3 points, and then people come back and say, oh no, we wound up winning by 3 points. But the thing I want to highlight about our boys cross-country team is our seniors. Our seniors on the boys cross-country team had a clear vision of what they wanted to do. They wanted to be sectional champions. They committed to that goal. They committed to it as a team. Greg Langone, I want to highlight him. He's one of the members of our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and one of the things that he talked about was, as a senior student athlete, you recognize that you don't have any more seasons left, and that they had all committed and had this idea to drive for this championship. And win or lose, it was still a great season for them. They were able to pull it through, and you realize that every space counts. Every person you go by counts. It was an incredible season for our boys cross-country team. And I'd like to call up, I don't believe Coach Jordan could make it tonight, so Coach Thompson is here, but I'd like to call up members of the boys cross-country team. Come on up. Congratulations. Fourth. Are you talking? Okay. And they wound up finishing fourth at the NISFA Championships down on Long Island. Tom's going to speak.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Kelly. I'm very thankful to speak on behalf of the boys cross-country team this evening because we had such a fun and successful season. We'd like to, as a team, extend our thanks to the board for their constant support and also to our coaches for all the opportunities that they provided to us over the course of the season. One of the things that makes cross-country unique among the fall sports is that it really begins in June. Without any of it being mandatory, this group of guys standing up here met pretty much every day over the summer to put in 50, 60, 70-mile weeks with just one goal on our mind. And once our season officially started in September, it seemed like sectionals arrived only a few weeks later. And like Mr. Coleman said, we went on our cool down after the race, sort of thinking that we lost by like 3 points to Toga. And when we got back to our tent, there were parents and coaches smiling, and they told us that we won by 3 points, and that was when we knew all those miles had paid off from June to November. And the learning experience that was the opportunity to work towards that goal for several months, and then to finally achieve it at sectionals is something that we'll carry into our life, into different areas of our lives beyond running. And I'm thankful, I know these guys are thankful, that we had hardworking teammates and coaches that were able to make that happen. Thank you.
Well done.
Good job. Thank you.
Thomas, great job.
This was a great championship this fall for our boys cross-country team. So just in closing, as proud as I am of all the success on the fields, the thing that I'm most proud of, and I say for last, is that all our teams made New York State Scholar Athlete. So not only are they contributing on the field, but they're also contributing in the classroom. We have leadership challenges ahead of us of some of the issues that were brought up earlier in our department that we have to continue to strive, and everybody's got to hear that message and continue to work for that. But we had a great fall. Looking forward to a great winter. Head back over to the gym. Hopefully watch the girls basketball team beat Bethlehem I'm over my time allotment, but Dr. Robinson, can't thank you enough, and especially the Board of Education. Thank you, and we'll see you.
Okay, at this time, we encourage students to, if they need to do homework, and we think you do, you could leave.
They all
No.
have
They all
homework.
can't wait.
And-
They all
and-
can't wait to do their homework.
And I said that because I knew we want to continue to see 100% of student athletes getting this award.
They all rush.
It doesn't matter what you say right now.
They're going to get, they're hungry.
Cookies.
Yeah, really.
No, they're going out for waiting. For Mexican
I have a problem with the team throwing on Sunday.
Bulford.
Okay, good, that's who my son's going.
Full house tonight.
I know.
Because he burned all the calories, he actually can't consume enough. He actually blacked out.
Okay, that's right.
He just wasn't eating enough.
We're going off now. We're
So
going
my
off.
husband had his out attending last week.
You're kidding me.
52. He had two out of 20.
So you know you're going to be getting out of the house tomorrow. Tonight. Yeah.
It's such a bad infection.
Again, sorry.
Yeah, we're going to be getting out of those calls. You want to get started, Bob?
Okay, we'll resume with the meeting. We'll move over to superintendent comments as well as information items on the budget.
So it's great that I have such a significant audience. Thank you.
That means we can move faster.
Faster than you said?
Less questions. Paraphrase everything.
So my objective here tonight is to speak about the start of the budget process. And similar to what Mr. Coleman mentioned with the sports season, in the beginning we feel as if we have so much time, but the end comes just like that. So as we stand here in December and we're thinking about, Mr. DeLallo just mentioned the state budget, April 1 state budget, and we're watching that very closely to see where the state is going. We know that the May vote will be here before we know it as well. And so everything that we do as a system is grounded in our mission as a school system. And so I'm just going to start there very briefly here, if I could get this. Opposite way. So everything that we do is grounded in our mission. And thanks to Kelly DeFisciani, you see, we have kind of changed the graphics here to put the district mission in context. And so when you think about what our mission is about, it's about how we ensure that the engagement is a core part of the fabric of our school experience for our kids. And a big part of that is having student voice and a passion for learning. And certainly we have two wonderful young people here that represent it tonight, and we have a lot of student athletes who just left the building that represent that piece of it. Innovation is a big part of our mission. How do we create opportunities for kids to innovate, to think creatively about things, and that's how we also make the school experience personally relevant for our kids. And recognizing that students have different talents, they have different needs, and our goal is always trying to make that personal relevant experience for our young people. The cultural competence piece of it. How do we look at all students and look at equity and outcomes? And recognizing that every child, first of all, deserves an opportunity to be successful, and secondly, we need to figure out how do we support that success. And we've heard it tonight. We've heard it tonight on a student athlete. We heard tonight about our students in the first Lego League. We heard tonight about our robotics kids. And you could pick any venue. We're always talking about how do we create that notion that we understand kids, who they are as individuals. So the fundamental notion of cultural competence comes down to that. You can't help someone if you really don't take the time to know them, and more importantly, know yourself and what you bring to the table. The global collaboration piece. We certainly want our young people, and Mrs. Hoffman alluded to the young lady who spoke at the Science National Society last night. We want our young people to be captains of industry. We want our young people to be the next leaders, to be next change agents in society beyond Shen. We want them to have a window to the world. Mrs. Strangis did a presentation earlier in the year about mirrors and windows. We want our books to reflect what kids who they are, but we also want the education experience to be a window to the world. So that's what we want. We want our kids not to be myopic in their views, but to be absolutely global in their perspective. And so the mission speaks to that. And the last piece of the mission, the notion of collective work and responsibility. No one person does it. It's a collective effort. It's a synergy of effort that makes us a great system. And we always have to be mindful of that. And not, as in my neck of the woods in Florida, you say, not become big-headed and think it's all about you. The minute any one person think about them, that's when we start losing the race. It's a collective effort that makes us a great system. And so when we think about the budget process, that's how we put the budget process in perspective. And Kelly, we have to figure out how do we do this in a format that could click it, nuts, roll it. So the second part of that equation, then we start with our mission, then we start talking about what are financial goals of our system. So the Board of Education adopted the goals, and our budget goal is fiscal responsibility. And I said budget goal, almost a slip. It's not a budget goal. It's about how we're responsible with the finances. The finances are not necessarily dollars and cents. It's every decision that we make. How are we responsible with opportunities that in fact maximize all the resources we have? And I won't go through all four, and the board has them. These are the four objectives within our goals document. And so when we think about the budget, we go right back to that. And the reason why that's important because it's not a political process. It's not a popularity process. It's not who comes in with the biggest signs get what they want or who screams loudest gets what they want. It really is a very deliberate process that we analyze and look at the pros and cons, ways the pros and cons, look at the needs, look at opportunities, look at costs, look at all those kind of things. At the end of the day, we want to put together a budget that in fact add value, which we're going to go to here in a second. So I share those slides because that's where it really comes back to our mission. How do we ensure that we are actually actualizing our mission and how we truly upholding the goals of the district that have been adopted by the board? So with that being said, as we start the process, and the process is multi-phase. In fact, the process already started. We started the process the minute that we ended the last process. And so the minute we approved the budget in May, we start thinking about administration of the budgets. The minute kids start come back in September, we start saying, what are all the things that we thought last February that we were going to be doing in September that's not going as well, or the things that surprise us, or the things that are going as planned, and all those things become a part of the next thinking for the next process. And so as we go to more detailed things such as Dr. Wood meeting with instructional leads and talking about programs and analyzing programs, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do different, and Mrs. Wetmore meeting with operational leaders, what's working, what's not working, all those very, very personal, intimate conversations. Be honest. Be honest and put it on the table now. Kind of speak now, forever hold your peace, because once the process unfolds, we don't want to hear after the fact, well, we wish you could have, would have. That's too late in the process. This is the time to have that conversation. So when we have those conversations, we're driven by three very simple things. What relevance does this particular initiative have? How is it relevant to the overall experience of our kids? And I always come back to that piece of it. It's not an adult-driven process. It's a process that comes back. What we do and how would it impact the quality experience for our kids? So what's the relevance piece of it? So we ask questions, what can we in fact do to make that classroom experience more relevant for students? And so through the budget process, we look at that. Either we continue certain things, modifying certain things, or looking to add certain things. We ask the responsive question. How can we be much more responsive and capitalize on emerging changes? Things are always changing. So for the past several years, implementation of one-to-one is a perfect example. It was, quite frankly, it wasn't even an option because technology has such a huge influence on everything that we do. And so as a system, it's not a question of will we catch up with it? It's a question of if or when. And quite frankly, it's how do we stay up with it is more the bigger issue as we move forward. So what's the responsive piece of it, for example? So that's one side of the coin. Well, we could put everything. What's responsive to the demographic shifts that we have in as a community? What's responsive to the larger societal needs that we have? What's the response to mental health? You name all those topics that we have, the big rocks, and the question is how do we address those things through the budget process? And then the last piece of it comes down to the responsibility piece. Because what we can't have, and I just came from, I was in New York City today doing a presentation, and my apologies for missing the executive session, stuck on the Northway, I hate the Northway traffic, just an editorial comment. But the part of the conversation we were talking about today was this whole notion of authentic agenda, and the whole notion of a commitment of conviction versus a commitment of convenience. When things are nice and convenient, anyone will want to do it. But those aren't the things that make a big difference. It's when things are challenging. You know you have to work through a challenge. You have to work through things. You have to grind. That's a conviction commitment. Because convenience is say, oh yeah, I'll do it as long as it's easy, or I do it as long as it doesn't take a lot of time. The conviction one says, you know what? I don't care about the time. I don't care about the effort. The work is important enough to put in whatever it is to face that challenge. So that's the responsibility piece that we have to ask ourselves. Are we as a system, individual, collective, and system, are we being responsible, true to our mission as an organization? And so when we having those critical conversations about what we put in the budget, that's what it comes down to. What's that sense of personal ethical responsibility that we all have to have that honest conversation about, yeah, you know, I would love to have this, but I realize that there's a greater need over there. And so how do we have those conversations to recognize that we do have a finite amount of resources? In many cases, we're shifting resources to address different priorities, and sometimes may not be the thing that somebody actually wants to give up on, but it's better for the organization to do so. So we talk about those kind of things. Those are the things that drive the conversation, how we assess needs. And as a result, 3 areas that we really try to come down to. And the first one is value add. It's a very simple proposition in my book. If it's not adding value, we're not doing it. Pretty simple. Why waste time and resources? If we can't say to someone, we're doing this because here's the value added, or even the potential, some cases, of value added, because some cases not as defined, why do it? Because we have to be good stewards of resources. We have to be able to stand account to our public, to our students, our faculty, and the community at large, say these are the value add, these are the reasons why we add. So the value add piece becomes important. The academic capacity starts what we do. We're a school. Our business is education of kids. So ensure that we have the academic capacity to address those kind of things, the supports to address those type of things, the type of rigor and experience that we give kids. That's what a value add. We really start thinking about the value add in those things. It doesn't necessarily only happen in the classroom. I think back on several years, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, we were in the process of actually reducing staff, doing some tight budget years, and we invested in transportation and GPS on buses. And I remember Glenn saying, hey, things versus people. And I was like, no, that value add is not going to, not only will it impact trans and enhance safety, but it's going to give us an opportunity to do some other things, some other areas that right now, that if we don't do that, we won't be able to do. And so we have to think about the value add because it comes in so many different dimensions all the time. And how does it enhance the overall experience? Cost effectiveness is not cost reduction. That's a key point. Sometimes, well, how are we going to reduce costs? I could reduce costs, but we could be penny wise and pound foolish. We could reduce costs and the quality falls to the floor, but we still spend a lot of money. Versus we can leverage opportunities and spend little and see a lot in return. So how do we become much more cost effective by leveraging our resources? And the last piece we always think about is how do we support it all? We've been very fortunate as a system over the last decade plus that we have pretty flatline budget, minimal impact on taxpayers, but yet our quality of programs have consistently done this. Our capacity have consistently done that. So that's always a piece that we focus on. How do we recognize the revenue side of it? But more importantly, how do we ensure that we're designing programs and services for our kids that's going to meet their needs and we can sustain it over time? We never want to put something in the budget one year that the next year we're going to be taken out. It's always about how do we sustain things over time, because a child can't say last year was a good year for me and now this is a bad year for me because of our budget is doing this. We always want to have that very flat line trajectory, incline trajectory moving forward. So those are the 3 things that drive a lot of the things that we do as a budget. There are certain things that and we're going to shift the slide, and we have cost drivers. These are actually investments. So we'll change. So you're talking about, so we have external mandates. There's some external things that impacts us. Big ticket items, health insurance. Health insurance is a big ticket item for us, and rightfully so. We hire people. We have about 2,200 bodies, about 1,600 full-time equivalent employees. That's a lot of people to do and provide services to the 10,000 plus kids, not only in Shen, but kids outside of Shen that we service as a system. So therefore, that's a big piece of it. So we look at retirement system costs is another big one. We're fortunate, knock on wood, the rates for health insurance for January to the first 6 months of our school year is supposed to be flat as a result of a lot of work by Kathy Chase and her team in the finance office, working with our brokers and making sure that we're really, really looking at everything. Retirement system rates right now flat. We're watching the marketplace. This is where the large larger stock marketplace also has a lagging effect, and so we'll see what that lagging effect will be a year from now, because always a lag in that effect. So retirement costs is one of those things you're going to watch very closely. There's a lot of mandates coming down from the state education department that we're watching. We know that the state has the new next gen standards, state standards, and we're going through the process now. How will that change what we do? What's some costs associated with those kind of things? And out there for us, Shen, as a system, the mandate, looming mandate of full-day K, if that truly becomes a law, we are planning on some things, but if that becomes a law, they may in fact change how we plan, accelerate how we plan, or compel us to plan differently. So that's out there. Don't have a lot of information on it yet, but it's one of those things that we have to be mindful of as we go through this process. The middle column is truly where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, in terms of instructional programming. So we have a lot of neat things that we're looking at. Equity and outcomes is going to drive what we do as a system. At the end of the day, we can't look at our data and say it's okay for a particular subgroup of students to be failing in our system. We cannot ever see that as okay. And so that's what I mean by equity and outcomes. Because every child, every parent who sends their child to school, they send it with blind faith that we are in fact doing what's in their best interest. And so when we look at equity and outcomes, that's what that means. And we know that sometimes on the other side of the equity piece is the privilege piece. People think, well, if you want everyone to be successful, are you going to take away from someone else? In some cases we do. We do transition resources. Because some cases we have an abundance in one place and lacking in other places. So we have to figure out what's that sweet spot. What's that sweet spot, especially if we can inject new resources into the equation. We always have to figure out what's the sweet spot, how do we leverage resources from year to year to keep, again, a positive experience for all kids. And so that's going to drive what we do. And so we're talking about what I mean by that, how we look at academic intervention services, how we look at ENL services for students. Last year we started the Kindergarten Jumpstart program as a pilot in Orange and Shattuck. Tremendous successful start for a lot of young people, and we're just like, wow, that's a start. So how do we expand on those type programs? Mrs. Mylod and her team are looking at some phonomics, phonemic awareness, phonomics. I need phonemic awareness. For some of our struggling readers to say, how do we again inject more for kids, especially at early age, so that the quality experience moving forward. We're looking at High School West, looking at some alternative program options for some of our 9th grade students. Because we know that if a child doesn't get 5 credits coming out of 9th grade, it's a long haul to graduation. And we also know that kids come into our system with different needs and talents. So how do we start looking at those type things to support kids to success? So that's what I mean by the equity and outcomes piece. Special education is a constant piece for us to make sure that we're providing a quality experience for all kids. Enrollment's always going to drive. You heard the enrollment forecast picture last board meeting, and so we're going to look at those kind of things, not only capacity, but what's our demographics of our kids, what our needs, and how does that impact us. We have the bubble moving out of middle school and moving more so in high school, so we start looking at staffing capacity. Do we have some opportunities for shifts, or do we have some opportunities to create better class size situations at a certain level? But those are key questions that we have to ask. Nothing is given. We have to analyze and ask those key questions all the time. So again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but even the instructional materials. And again, I'm going to give a lot of credit most recently to Mrs. Strangis and some of the conversations she's having with the elementary folks. The whole notion of what kind of material do we have in front of our kids? So not even from a culture piece, but from interest piece. You know, I was back today, this gentleman was saying that his kid was a reluctant reader until he started giving kids comic books. And now the kid you can't put him down. And so in the typical classroom, you don't have a teacher say, well, here, read a comic book. We're going to pull out a textbook, and the kid's like, huh? You give the kid, now the kid reading becomes something that I want to do, and not something that I'm forced to do. Just an example. So how do we create those environments for kids all the time? Mental health is going to be a continued focus for us in mental health and wellness. Professional development is a key. We have to invest in our folks. We have to invest in our folks so they can be on top of their game, so they can provide the best services to our students. Articulation agreements. This is something that Dr. Wood is spearheading. In fact, tomorrow, actually it's Thursday, meeting with her and the contingent of our administrators, going to Hudson Valley, meeting with the contingent of folks at Hudson Valley to try to create some articulation agreements. When kids are taking classes, there's a much more straight line. You do these things, here are some credit opportunities, here are some transfer opportunities, here's how the experience changes for you. So we're looking at that from the CTE perspective, Mrs. Barrett's been doing a lot of that work, trying to create those pathways. We're looking at it from the humanities perspective, because we offer a lot of courses here at Shen, and so we want to make sure that kids understand that there's actually a tremendous benefit to these type things. You heard a presentation a couple board meetings ago. We talked about a number of courses that we have credit associated with. I think it was up to 40 plus courses, credit courses that kids could walk out of here with college credits. So how do we have much more streamlined articulation agreements with our local colleges? So that's something that we're really going to amp up, and there could be some cost implications to that. So we want to be able to address those kind of things. And certainly technology is an ongoing one for us as we move forward. On the operational side, we constantly focus on creating the type of setting that's quite frank with you, up to date and engaging. I'm pleased. I just saw somebody send a picture today of and the board is going to go on a tour on the 18th of the library. So the cabinets are in was the thing. The cabinets are in the library with a picture. And so we're looking forward to the library. Huge investment, but it's a huge investment that will pay tremendous dividends for decades for our students. And so we're looking at those kind of things. In the last budget cycle, we had some funds to create for teachers to apply for the mini grants, so to speak, to do creative furnishing in classrooms to make spaces more engaging. So all these little things add up very quickly in terms of how do we keep transforming our system and the structure of our system to be much more engaging. We can't say, hey, be more engaging, but use what you had 30 years ago. It doesn't work that way. So if we're going to be true to that commitment, we have to figure out how do we keep investing, feeding that commitment over time. So those are kind of things that we have to look for. Safety is an ongoing one. We're investing a lot of money right now as we speak in safety. We will continue to invest a lot of money in safety, particularly infrastructure safety. Our capacity to shut down places very quickly is a huge part of that safety initiative that we want to make sure we look forward. And certainly we have big things like negotiations is ongoing. Those are big cost pieces that have long-term implications. And the last piece I put on here, and I'm going to tease out more with the board as we move forward, is administrative capacity. If there's one area that I'm particularly, I'm going to say concerned, but I think an area that we need to address more is how do we look at capacity surrounding special education. For one, it's a significant number of kids, and two, our current capacity doesn't give us truly that next edge. And so how do we start looking at administrative capacity to do things from preschool programs to what I call the post-high school programs? You name it, we have it here in the system. And so if we really going to talk about really having a much more significant impact, we need to figure out the capacity piece and look at those kind of distribution of burden, if you will, the number of caseload that people carry, particularly the administrative side. So that's something that we'll tease out more with the board as we move forward. So the bottom line is, as we look at the budget process, and we make a lot of assumptions about the budget process, those are the things that drive our assumptions. The mission of the school district is the first thing that drive our assumption. The fiscal goal, second thing that drive our assumption. And those three, the value add, cost containment, are the two big things that we think about drive our budget assumption, and asking those critical questions. Is it relevant? Are we, in fact, being responsive? And are we responsible? Because when we present a budget to the board, and the board adopts it and presents to the community, we need to be able to be absolutely certain that what the budget does hits those targets, that it's relevant, that it's responsive to the needs and the emerging opportunities that we have, and that we are being responsible as stewards of the resources of this community. So that's the backdrop, if you were to mind, the mentality, if you were, behind the numbers. And as you probably know as board, I don't talk a lot of numbers when I talk budget, because it's not the tail wagging the dog. The minute we get caught into the numbers first, we constrain everything. We get into the thought. Put your best thought on the table. Let's chew it apart, and then we're going to come out with some things that we think hit these three dimensions. So when we present to you, the board, we have a high degree of confidence that it's going to move us to another place as we move forward. So the process is unfolding. I'll send back out a copy again to the board, the budget calendar, so you kind of see that there's a lot of work that happens. And sometimes, even from the public, they see us have 3 or 4 public meetings here, and we highlight some numbers, and they think, hey, what happened? That process was only 3 or 4 meetings. It's a lot of internal work that goes to making sure that we package things and present to the board and to the public in such a way that it's understandable, but more importantly, it ensures that the quality of the experience for our kids is better next year than it was the year prior. That's always going to be our focus. We have to be better the next year as a result of going through the process. Thoughts, questions, concerns, criticisms? So more to come as we move forward, Mr. President.
Gary mentioned what we're seeing out of Albany. We may be shifting towards more money coming forward across the state. Have you sort of factored that in, or is it, as you said in previous years, strange things happen in December that you don't understand until April?
So two things, just not to prolong this too much. One of the things that I think we have, it has been the goal, the objective, and I think we have done a good job at it, is to, as much as we can, control our destiny as an organization. In other words, not being in a situation that as a political wind blows, we're blowing with the political winds. Versus the political winds could blow, we're trying to keep a steady feet all the time. And so we watch the politics in Albany, and so I always say worst case scenario. Worst case scenario right now, if we don't get an additional cent from Albany, what does that mean for us? So we start from that premise. Can we minimally sustain the quality programs that we have, and through other things that we do within the budget process, create capacity for ourselves? And that's always a big thing. What can we do to control capacity for ourselves? And quite frankly, anything else becomes bonus in the equation. So we're watching Albany. It's going to be an interesting year. Not to politically, it's going to be democratically controlled in both houses and the governor, and all three branches, if you will, of government in Albany. So it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen with that. The last time it was the case, people weren't as responsible, I would say, because they did a lot of stuff one year that they couldn't sustain the next year. So I think there were some lessons learned from that. And the same thing when it was control Republican, they did the same thing. Everybody get excited and go out and do a lot of stuff, and then the next year they can't sustain it because politics shifts. And so so I think people both watching that say, how can we be much more responsible and sustaining things moving forward? And so we're going to watch things such as what's the stock market impact on income taxes coming to the state of New York. That's what drives the state budget. So you're going to start hearing very quickly about the deficit amount in the state. What's that number? It's probably going to start like 5 million, and by the time we get to April, magically it's going to be 1.2 million. So the numbers are always shifting, and we have to watch those kind of pieces. So interesting times moving into 2019, and certainly right after the new year, when a shift in leadership occurs, you'll start hearing right away. I guarantee that first, second week in January, pick up your news, you're going to start hearing everything. In fact, there's a new lady that was announced today, a new person was announced today to be the chair of the Education Committee for the Assembly. And so what's her bent, so to speak, in terms of education, and that's going to be the big piece of it, because that's where the conversations happen in that room. That comes out into the governor's speech. The governor is positioning himself. He said no longer running for the president, but we'll see. Maybe position himself for potential vice president nominee. Who knows? Politics, interesting bedfellows. So we watch all those things, but it's kind of like entertainment, to be quite frank with you, because at the end of the day, you won't know until the 12th hour, some point around April, what's real. And we hope that we would have done enough stuff internally that whatever happens there doesn't have a huge negative impact on what we do. If anything else, just be a bonus and gives us more capacity to enhance the program for kids. So more to come on that as well. So again, thanks for your time and attention, and stay tuned to the process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. Now let's go over to item C, policy and procedures, first reading. Mrs. Garland, please.
Good evening. Tonight we have 3 policies coming for first reading from November's policy review meeting. Questions for this? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go on to consent items. First is the treasurer's report. Can I have a motion to bring this forward? Mr. Gilbert, second. Ms. Rajat. Any comments or questions on this? All in favor? And let's go over to minutes. I think we can combine these. Oh, no, we have to separate because I think some folks are. Yes, that's right. So minutes from November 2nd, motion. November 6th. Mrs. Miller, second. Mrs. Stevenson, sorry.
I know.
Yeah, I know. All in favor? And let's go to minutes for November 20th. Okay, Motion for Mrs. Hoffman, second. Mrs. Stevenson? All in favor?
I need to abstain from that. I need to abstain.
You have two
I wasn't here.
Oh, two abstentions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two.
Who was the, yeah,
Todd and
Rashad.
Christina.
I thought Gary wasn't at that.
Gary wasn't at the last one either. Over the,
Yep,
yeah.
Yes,
right.
so
That's
three,
right.
yep,
That's
so
funny.
3 abstentions.
Sorry.
Okay, let's go over to action items. Let's combine 1 and 2. We have 4 bids as well as disposal of obsolete furniture, equipment, and textbooks. Can I have a motion on this? Mrs. Miller, second. Mrs. Rajat. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor? Third item is donations, piano and Chromebooks with gratitude. Can I have a motion for this? Mrs. Hoffman, second. Mrs. Rajat. Any comments or questions? All in favor? And fourth one, and I will speak to this once we get to it, but recognition of CMI certifications. Can I have a motion on this one to bring to the table? Mr. Gilbert, second. Mrs. Hoffman. Just a comment from me, this is something we started in 2017. This indicates to what level we're doing things in the district. This is a way to recognize our custodial staff for all the additional training they've got that has come forward. They've really taken this on board. My first year here, we brought in a whole new set of light bulbs, and what our custodial staff did on the last building on their own time, they put the light bulbs up all together as one group in one of the buildings. And this is kind of the attitude, this is the attitude they have within this group. They're the unsung heroes of making sure our buildings are clean, ready for students, ready for anything. And this is just simply a way that we're improving the level of work in the district. Getting things being taught, when you think about how you formally get taught how to clean something, we've done that, and this group has taken it on board. So with much appreciation, we'd like to ensure that the certificates going forward to these well-deserved individuals who stepped up. So, all in favor? Next one, item 5, rental agreement for SPAC, date of 27th June. Motion, Mr. Gilbert, second, Mrs. Rajat. Any comments or questions?
I did notice that it just has one time in there, so 1:30. There's.
Yeah, we share the space.
Is Saratoga before us?
Yeah.
And then is anyone after us?
No.
Oh, okay, because it's just very hard to get in there to get started. But it's always worked.
Yeah,
It's always, it just happens to work out. Okay. All right.
Sorry.
No other comments.
So if you have a kid graduating, just come early, camp out at Saratoga.
Crazy. It was very hard to get in, even after leaving really early last year, because the traffic of the exiting students and and families, and the ones that were arriving. So anyway, okay, no other comment.
All in favor of the rental agreement? Okay. Number 6, scholarships and local grant donations. Motion on this?
With appreciation.
Appreciation, Mrs. Miller, and second, Mrs. Hoffman. Any comments or questions? All in favor? With appreciation? Okay. Item 7, a change order on Riverview Construction. Motion to bring this one forward. Mr. Dalala, Mrs. Stevenson, comments or questions? Okay, all in favor? And let's go to acceptance of special education placements.
Mr. Amelia is going to stand in for Mrs. Malab. And don't ask him any questions. He studied the whole binder while he's standing back there.
So you have the notes in front of you. Mrs. Mylott says the following placements and services for the 2018-19 school year are recommended for acceptance based upon the recommendation of the District Committee on Special Education Subcommittee, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education.
Motion from Mr. Gilbert, second, Mrs. Rajat. Any comments or questions? All in favor? And let's go to personnel with Mrs. Bush.
Okay. We have a few retirements that I'd like to recognize tonight. We have Principal Michael Smith is going to be retiring after 18 years with the district, end of the day, June 30th. And Mr. Greg Wing, retiring after 18 years as principal at Carrigan, again retiring at the end of the day, June 30th. Classified staff, Victoria Behrens is retiring as teacher aide, end of the day, December 31st, and she's been with us for 15 years. Teresa Fortier has been an elementary classroom aide for 22 years, and she is retiring as of January 1st. And Kathleen Slagan is currently a high school West secondary school monitor, retiring after 15 years at the end of December.
Motion to bring this one forward. Mrs. Hoffman, second, Mrs. Stevenson. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Thank you.
And let's go to policies for second reading with Mrs. Carmen.
Hello. So we have second reading that was presented for first reading in November. Any questions regarding those?
Motion on this one. Mrs. Rajat, second, Mrs. Miller. Any comments, questions? If not, all in favor? Okay, let's go to item 9, public comments. Anybody from the public who wishes to speak at this time? If not, just a quick note on policy, which is number 10, is we did meet last week for the items to be brought forward January. So that's where it sits. Both first and second reading are now moving forward as well. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Hoffman, second, Mrs. Miller. All in favor? Okay. We're done. Thank you.